call the June 20, 2024 meeting of the Maplewood Parks and Recreation Commission to order. We will start with the roll call.
Craig Brennan, present.
Vicki Lehar, present.
Jason Demo, present.
Terry Millett, present.
Monica Barton, present.
And
Todd Carroll, present.
And we are missing Kimmy and
Mark.
Next, we have the approval of the agenda.
And Chair, members of the commission, I request to add an item to the under new business, the bus tour. So if
Do we need a
someone wants-
motion for that?
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. The approval of the minutes from April 17, 2024. If everybody had a chance to browse them, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve that. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We pass. Now we are on to new business. The first item seems to be Harvest Park Master Plan update.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. I'm here to talk about Harvest Park Master Plan update, and as you know from our last meeting, we held a community open house feedback session, however we're going to call it, at Harvest Park to discuss where we left the Harvest Park Master Plan preferred concept back in 2020, and then 4 years later, ideas that we had from staff and recommendations from our consultant on to what maybe we should update based on what we've seen in park usage and changes with Purple Line and things like that. So, and I thought to start off first, I would kind of turn it over to Commissioner Millett, and because she was there, and just kind of speak to your experience just overall of the open house, and then we can kind of get into it. So, Terry?
First of all, it was a huge turnout, and everybody had a lot to say, mostly positive. You had a few negatives, but everybody put down what they wanted. I heard a lot of people who liked that there would be another playground. There were a few that didn't, but the lighting, seemed like that was one thing that people were afraid it was going to be too bright all the time, but I was told it wasn't going to be the same type of lighting that is over at like Hazelwood or whatever, and it would only be on when there's events going on. So that, I think, comforted them. But there were a lot of comments, a lot of neighbors came, and it was good to see everybody's input and have them tell us what they wanted. I don't know what you heard, but I think between option 1 and 2, I heard more towards 2, but I don't know what the actual turnout was.
Yeah, and we'll get into, because LHB, our consultant, kind of took all the notes from the night and compiled, and I'll get to that. So just a little review, if I can have the computer, please. There we go. Okay. This was kind of the welcome to the group. We had a bunch of different boards that were up, and so we let them know there was no formal presentation, and we had 3 boards up. We had one where it was the original conditions, which is on the left-hand side there, so what the park looks like currently, and then on the right side of this slide, we had where the plan had gotten to in 2020, and just to refresh everyone at home and the commission here who might not have been here in 2020, after all the public engagement that took place, as you can see in there, we did the project kickoff in October of 2018, actually, and then we had public engagement quite extensively through, and in May of 2020, we had brought it to the commission. It was April or May. Don't quote me, but the Parks Commission got to weigh in, and they did recommend approving this current plan that you see there on the right. And the next step would have been to take it to council, but it was 2020, COVID hit. There were a lot of changes in the department and things, and so it was put on hold. So we showed them existing conditions now, what the plan had been in 2020, and then what we had, the changes we had made based on usage of the park and what we've seen, And so the easiest way, I think, is to go, there were two different options, option 1 and 2. So this here is option 1. And the biggest changes, there really weren't a ton from 2020 because due to all the public engagement we did and the work staff did and Parks Commission's comments, the plan held up pretty well for the last 4 years. But one thing we did realize was whether the purple line is there or not, was going to have parking on the south end of the park. We realized we didn't want to shrink down the existing parking lot because that had been part of the plan. I'll switch back. It's a little, the parking lot was going to be shrunk down because there was going to be a large lot potentially on the south end. And so we were going to shrink the existing lot down. And we realized there's so much usage of that park. And from everything we've heard from residents who use the park and the neighbors who see it on the weekends when it's just packed, it didn't make sense to make that parking lot any smaller. And that was kind of the consensus we heard that night as well. So we propose not to shrink down the existing parking lot, but then that would actually move the shelter that had been where the shrunk down parking lot had been. You can see the picnic shelter right here. If you can see I've got the mouse on it there, moved to the other side of the trail to give it more room because there wouldn't be room for it there anymore. So moving that over to the other side. And then there was the one existing softball field that really sits and isn't used. Even when the groups go out and use the open space, they kind of just go around it or use it, but not for a softball field. And our recreation coordinator has said that, they have not, supervisor, sorry, they have not permitted it out. No one has requested to use that field. And so we just said the best in our estimation would be to just remove that last existing field there because we have plenty of other fields throughout our system, and then make it open space because there was a lot of talk about they still want to keep the open green space at the park for volleyball, takra, anything that, just pops up that was very important to the residents. And so we proposed leaving that more open space. And then you can see there is a soccer field, and I wanted to remind people that was one of the things that was a little tough to get ahead. Just because the fields are outlined on the space here doesn't mean that they're always going to be striped and they're like formally set up and you can't change it. The kind of the beauty of a soccer field is you can change it. So if there was another event, a volleyball tournament, we wouldn't necessarily have to stripe it, but we wanted to show that you could fit the soccer fields in if needed. And that was really important because Hazelwood, our other community athletic park, never gets the fields rested. And especially in a year like this, our fields are in rough shape right now. And to have another facility where we could put fields just to rest certain fields is really important. So that could potentially just be open space there. So right next to it, if you see where I've got the mouse here, that all could be open space at any given time. And we felt that was important. And then another change that we realized is regardless of the purple line, if they're there or not, parking is needed on the south end of the park just because with an active pickleball complex there, the basketball courts, and then potential other usages on the south end, we need parking. I mean, that's a really long way for accessibility and from the main lot that's in the park. And otherwise, they'd all be parking on Jarvis. And so some need for parking was necessary on the end of the park. So those were really the big changes that we proposed from the original plan. And then option 1 talked about this area here, if you can see on the south end. It was giving it more of a passive trails, natural plantings, kind of meandering where it would connect on the south end, and it would be adjacent to the Bruce Vento Trail as an option. And that's really was the big change for option 1. And then option 2, it's the same exact changes I just spoke to you about, but it would be something more active. And the 2 options we put out there were a skate park or some kind of bike course, off-road trails, or, we could think of what we'd want that to be. Because those are 2 amenities that we don't currently have in our system that were identified that people had put on their list of wants that we don't have. And so we gave them the option of, do you just want it to be a passive like walking area, or would you want to see something else here? And then as Terry said, people seem to really gravitate toward option 2 and the bike option, because we thought as staff, and I will say staff recommendation, we kind of aligned with the bike trail course, only because we'd had a resident, if you remember right, he came to speak to the commission, has it been 2-3 years ago, about wanting to put something in our parks, and he had wanted to do trial ones in old tennis courts, and that kind of didn't go too well because the surface was like, it was an idea, but it didn't do that well. And then also, because with the Bruce Vento Trail, it seems like a natural thing to put on that end of the park where people could come and do the course and ride their bikes there, and then just, they could hop on the Bruce Vento Trail and go for a ride, or it just seemed to be a natural fit. And it's not as permanent, so if in the future we wanted to change what the park looked like, it'd be a lot easier to convert something like that versus a skate park where you have to put in infrastructure, concrete, and, permanent features. So that was, staff was leaning, just from what we're thinking might be the best fit to the bikes course, and it seemed like the public responded to that as well. And then they got to, so there was a lot for them to look at, and we had like Terry said, we had a lot of attendance. I mean, from the minute we started till about 15 minutes after, we had solid people. At one time, we were trying to estimate that we had between 50 and 60 people there, which is a lot for a meeting like this. Not everybody signed in on the sign-in sheet, but everyone was very active in giving their opinions, which was great, because that's what we wanted. And there was a mix of people who used the park, people that were in the park that maybe didn't even know about it but came over, and then the residents, of course, who live on the park that have a vested interest in what happens in their backyard, quote. And so it was a really good conversation. So after that, we took all the results from their comments, we collected them on Post-it notes, or they wrote on the sheets, whatever they wanted to get us their comments. Some people emailed afterwards. Terry, you said you had gotten an email from some people, so people were very passionate about their thoughts. And so then what we did was, I need to switch to,
Audra, and just the one thing I was going to
Sure.
say. So what we were saying before, I don't think you guys maybe understood. We still want to do parking in the south there, but not a two-story parking now. We're talking more a parking lot instead of the two-story.
Right. Well,
That
and-
was something that we had said before. I don't know if everybody knew that.
and it was,
Everybody seemed very happy with the change.
right. And so this is kind of a recap of what I just told you. So if you want to read that, overall, they were pleased to see the parking ramp was replaced by natural area or bike skills training course and the two options. And it seemed like there was more support for the bike skills training area. And the two parking lots on the end, there was a 20-stall parking lot proposed and a 40. And I was a little surprised, but it made sense that more people said 40. You want a bigger one because there's going to be a need, and especially if you put in a bike skills course or something and you have the pickleball, you need adequate parking lot. So that's what we heard, that they supported that to ease safety issues with on-street parking in the area and traffic. Some people didn't want any parking at all, but for the most part, people are like, yeah, we need the parking lot. Now, I don't know if you were, but I was surprised to hear that many people wanted the larger parking lot.
Yeah,
So-
I think they wanted the park, I think they didn't like having the two-story, because I think they were worried that it wouldn't be used for parking, and I think they were very happy that it was switched over.
Right. And people seem to really like the trail loops, just knowing that there's that connectivity all through the park. And with the new senior living apartments or complex that's on the north end of the park, one of the representatives was there, and she was really excited to hear that there was a trail leading directly to their property and coming in, and then on the north end of the park, that we had that more passive area for the residents that had maybe bocce ball or some less active activities. It'd tie right in with the native seed garden with urban roots, and just a nice area and a little gazebo for the residents to use, and then they could come and walk the trails as much as they wanted to. So one comment we did hear, and I don't know if it'll be easily reflected in here, is they were looking at more trail connections to lead to the Bruce Vento Trail on the north side. So that was one thing that people thought would be nice to have, and that's all things we can definitely look at. The old playground, obviously everyone was really happy that the old one was going to be replaced because it needs it. And for the most part, people were happy to hear that it wasn't going to be up on that hill, kind of tucked away, that it would be down by the parking lot, more accessible. There were a couple neighbors who live on the park, closest to the parking lot, that were worried that it might be too close where we have it. And we could look about moving it a little bit further, but compared to other playgrounds in our parks that are by housing, this one will actually be much further away than a lot of them are. It's just kind of one of the things of living on the park, and we owe it to all the taxpayers and our residents and our users to make sure it's as accessible as possible. So by putting that in the shelter near the parking lot, less place for people to have to carry their stuff, and then centrally located, your kids could be playing on the playground. You can see them while you're playing soccer or doing other things. Is definitely something that we've seen in our other parks that we wish we had, because sometimes when the playground's too far away or it's tucked in a corner, less visible and less accessible. And then we have the problem, like even at Wakefield, where people want to drive on the trails because they don't want to take their stuff and to their rental or the picnic shelters, and so they will just drive into the park. And so then we have the issue of people driving on the trail. So by having it right by the parking lot, it alleviates, just for safety, it helps us with that, so. And I know I'm going fast. We can go back and revisit this, but I just kind of want to get through the review for you. And then there were some people that, let's see, they were worried about the playground. There was a couple of people that were worried about that and wanted buffer and fencing around the playground, but I will say we've never put a fence around any playground that we've put in a park, or, and I don't know that putting a fence around would stop with noise or that kind of thing. I wasn't quite sure what that meant about putting fencing and buffering, but we would still be cognizant of trying to make sure it was a good location that wasn't right on a house. Just like Sherwood, we moved the playground out to closer to the parking lot because it's tucked right back by literally on the residence fence, and so we moved it out. So we would definitely keep that in mind. So, as you can see here, these are some shots that were taken in the very beginning of the meeting. Neil Brenneman tried to take a few, and then he got pulled into the conversation, so we got a few photos in the very, very beginning, and then we didn't have time to take any more, but this gives you an idea of, they were there right away at 5, which was great. And it was a very windy day, so we ended up taking the boards and taping them to a picnic table each so people could go around the tables. That's why everyone's around the tables, because they wouldn't have stayed on the easels. They would have blown across the park. So that's what we had to do.
I think we had like all ages and neighbors who had been there for years and years and years to neighbors that had just moved in.
Right.
And it was a huge.
That's why I love
spread.
this picture.
Yeah.
I think I took this one because they were there right away early. And this young man, this was his park, and he wanted to give his input because he was very passionate about the park. So we'll just go through some of the comments. These are just Post-its and comments that were put on the board. So some people were worried about the soccer field lights, and they were, I think, thinking of the big bright lights at Hazelwood, and we did try to communicate that lighting has changed a lot in the last 20 years, and we're able to have much more control over the LEDs, and that they would be controlled, so they wouldn't be on all night. They would be on if there was a match scheduled, but they would be off, and they wouldn't be on later than 10 o'clock when the park closes. They wouldn't be on, and then we would make every effort to aim them inward so they aren't just lighting up the whole park, but it's definitely something that we would be concerned about. And then also the other lighting was actually a big bonus for most people with the trails through the park, because a lot of people, when we went through this process in 2020, hated that they couldn't walk the trails in the winter when it got, when the days got shorter, because there's no light in the park at all, and it wasn't safe, it was too dark. So we want to have, lighting around the trails so they could use the parks potentially till 10 o'clock, even during the fall and winter months. And those, again, would be lights similar to what we did at Wakefield, so they wouldn't be big, bright lights that would be shining into the neighbors' houses. And then someone did say that a need for a stop sign at Hazelwood and Brooks, the crosswalk, just because they watch people on the weekends pulling out of there, and a safety concern. And Steve Love, our Public Works Director, was there and made notes of that. So these are all things that we can consider to make the park safer, so it was good to get that feedback. Flowers and native plants with the walking area. We would keep that in mind with the landscaping. And there were a lot of people that thought maybe we were there as part of the purple line, and we tried to make it very clear at the meeting that the purple line didn't factor into this at all, because whatever they do, this is just the plan for the park. And so, but they did still voice their concerns about the purple line, so we did get a lot of those comments, and then we just let them know that, that we knew that, there wasn't going to be the ramp anymore, like they talked about potentially in 2020, that it was a surface lot, and most likely it would just be a much smaller lot, and then it would be needed, that we actually really can benefit from parking on that end. So that's what that comment was. And so we'll go on to Harvest Park Option 1. And again, 1 and 2 are very similar. Like I said, the changes between 1 and 2 are really what to do with the south end of the park. Otherwise, they were the same. So people liked that there were restrooms. Again, there was someone, and we just put, I probably shouldn't have that comment with their phone number. I saw the consultants put it in there, but.
I already texted him, so.
Okay. Yeah, he was very concerned about reducing parking and traffic, the speed, so they wanted to do something about speed, because the park is heavily used. It's one, it definitely is a community athletic park, and even as undeveloped as it is, it gets heavily used. So, no parking lots or ramp. Again, they were concerned about it being tied to purple line, so we were trying to make it clear, and I get that, people are passionate about it, but we just tried to say this is about the park, not about the purple line. And again, some of the same people had very strong comments, and I can tell you that the playground would not be moved to a person's house. That won't help. I mean, that will not happen. The speed on Jarvis, so that's something we can look into, because they think people are already speeding on Jarvis, but that would be a public works issue and something that we definitely will look into. And again, supporting the playground with as much accessible equipment and features as possible needs to be by the parking lot for access, and as staff, we do agree that it needs to be close and centrally located, so it's because right now that playground isn't easy for, if someone had mobility issues, they wouldn't be able to get up that hill and get to that playground, because it's up on the slope and it's hidden away. 1 shade tree by bench and playground equipment at Hazelwood Park with no shade by the playground. It's too hot in the summer. But what I took from that comment is, yes, shade is definitely something, when we're incorporating playgrounds, putting the sunshades and things as we get the trees to start to grow, because we've had to remove a lot of trees, and Harvest could use some, so there will be trees planted strategically, but they take a while to grow, so we would definitely be looking into that. And also, I think I forgot to mention, down by the pickleball courts, it was suggested that we put sunshades, like a bench with a sunshade, so if people are waiting to play pickleball, that there's some kind of shade for them, because sometimes you get a crowd and they're waiting to get in and play, so putting something like that by the pickleball courts is already something we've made a note of. I guess this one they said, even though it's option 1, number 2 is best parking lot for the south, 1 is best for restored prairie with trails in the south. So yeah, if we weren't, I guess what they're saying, I think, is that if we didn't put in a bike skills course or a skate park, and it was just a natural area, you could get by with a smaller parking lot. But otherwise, they would say the larger one. Don't need 20 stalls. Street parking is cool, both sides. Slow down cars. Yeah, and in this comment, again, we just tried to not edit people's comments. We just wanted to put them in. Some folks would like more parking here instead. This area of the city is home to 1 small colony of the critically endangered rusty patch bees. I'm not sure of that. I don't know that that's been established at this park. It could have been. I'm not aware of that. I did talk to our natural resources coordinator, and she wasn't sure at this particular location. But the good news is we do have the native seed garden on the north end with Urban Roots, and we intend to continue that agreement because it's been a good partnership. So there's already an ideal pollinator habitat on the north end, which an athletic park usually doesn't ever have. It's a unique feature to Harvest, so that's something we would definitely keep, because it seems like it's important to people, and we wouldn't want to take that out. Some people didn't want it to just be pickleball, they wanted tennis, but again, we've got tennis courts in our other service areas, and even in our master plan, how we talked about, having tennis courts in certain service areas, but we do not have a pickleball complex anywhere. This would be the first one that we have. So again, we feel it's important to put the 6 pickleball courts in there at this particular location. Because if we kept tennis on the one side, it would really cut down the number of courts we'd have. So again, that would be something for the commission to discuss, but that was just where staff was coming from making it just pickleball, and then we can put dedicated pickleball nets in instead of having, like we do now, a tennis court nets with pickleball lines and having you kind of play that way. All right. Someone loved the idea of a restored prairie and native plants, supporting pollinators. And so again, if we didn't do it on the south end, we do have the native seed garden in that area on the north end, and that is not proposed to change. But we could have, if they so wanted it, we could have just the natural walking paths on the south end. But one thing I did remind people at the meeting, and I will just say it one more time here, is, all the parks have different classifications, but Harvest is one of only 2 community athletic parks that we have, they're with their designation. And I know some people said, well, Harvest wasn't, built up like this, and now you want to do it. It's like, well, it never got there, and maybe it should have a long time ago, but it hasn't. But, it is set aside as an athletic park just like Hazelwood. Those are the 2 in our whole system that are supposed to be set aside for those activities. So if we want to have a bike trail, if we want to have the complex and more active park, those are the 2 locations where we would need to have it, because they're the size that can handle it, and they're designated for that. So just to keep that in mind. And then someone again about the safety 4-way stop at Hazelwood and Brooks to slow traffic coming from the park. Add a few more benches around the trail. Good comment. We did have benches, they're on there, but it's kind of hard to see. But yes, we would have benches all around, 2 places for people to stop while they're walking around the trails. And especially maybe a few more on the north end for some of the residents that might appreciate more benches just on that more passive area on the north end. I like this one. It will become necessary to have 1 or 2 dog poop stations with bags and trash. And then the small parking lot on the south end, no skate park needed. I prefer option 1, but I would also like to see an enclosed dog exercise area. The amount of time people have their dogs loose is scary and dangerous. And the one thing as staff, we did not offer a dog park at Harvest as an option, kind of pointedly because, again, it's a athletic complex, it's an athletic park, and just with the usage in that park, that we did not feel that dog park would be, because it would have to be fenced in and maintained, and it would, section off that section of the park. So we didn't propose that as an idea. But we wanted to put it down here in case someone wanted to talk about that some more. No stadium lights, walking lights on path are fine if light is pointing down. And again, we did say there will be some lights for, so we have some lighted fields, because it's really tough not to have them. Even our rugby group, they sometimes play at Hazelwood, because if they have a match that's later and they have to play at night, we have no lights, at Afton. And so having lights for some of these activities, it's been shown that we have a need for it in our system. So we would be very careful about how we would do the lighting, but we still think there's a need for lighting for the fields. But I understand their concerns, for sure. Access to the Bruce Vento Trail, and I think that one came from people wondering if there could be, our trails kind of run parallel to the Bruce Vento Trail, maybe having some trail connections from Harvest to the trail, and that's something we can look at and maybe talk with the county and see what we can do if it makes sense. And then Harlan wanted to put his name down. He prefers option 0. No light rail. He was very focused on the purple line, and so we put it in, but it's there for that. Okay. Like you said, lots of good interaction, lots of comments. Love the green space and the picnic shelters and permanent restrooms. Love the pickleball. Most people seemed, and Terry, you can chime in if I'm not remembering right, but they seemed very excited about the pickleball.
Pickleball
Oh,
is huge,
I didn't
yeah.
personally talk to anyone who didn't think that
And I
was a
did
great
see
idea.
There's 2 events coming up in Maplewood. with.
Yeah, public safety.
Public safety.
Yeah, and they're going to be at Harvest. They're going to make do with the tennis nets,
Yeah.
but
I think there's 2 different ones coming
yeah,
up.
they're going to be
And
at
I think
Sherwood.
it's all age.
Yep. They're going to be at Sherwood and they're going to be at Harvest coming up
Yeah.
first. Okay. So no stadium lights. Lights around the path get point right down. Soft lighting. People were nervous about the lighting for sure. I think I skipped one here. Oh, prioritize playground replacement, which, yes, we've heard loud and clear those playgrounds need to be replaced there. Increase safety at the Jarvis entrance. Increase other parking lot on Jarvis to split up the traffic. So like I said, people seemed very supportive of parking lots to help with the traffic and the congestion on Jarvis. Stop sign on Hazelwood and Brooks again. Prefer restored prairie with trails to bike skills and skate park area. Concession stand for organizations to rent. We had not looked into that. That was an interesting concept. We will have those larger shelters there, so, I mean, they potentially, but we had not looked at a building like they have at Goodrich for, like, formally selling concessions, because that is, it's very expensive to build those kind of buildings, and, you know, it doesn't mean they couldn't sell concessions, but maybe finding a way to do it in a shelter that's also open to other things might be a good compromise, but it was a good thought. And then moving on to Harvest Park Option 2, that's the one with either the bike skills course or the skate park. And just so you know, with the comments, they may be attached to a board, but there were so many people kind of around and people catching up on what we were doing that there might be some overlap of comments that maybe don't apply to the board they were on, but we just wanted to stay true to the information we got to present to you. So they liked the larger parking lot, recommended one-sided parking on Jarvis on the park side. And I remember this resident, they wanted the larger parking lot, the 40 stall, and then they wanted the parking limited to just one side of the street. So that was their comment. Someone didn't want the baseball to go away, but it actually is a softball field, and it's a small, it wasn't a regulation baseball field. And I will say, I think I've mentioned it to the commission before, but East Twins is no longer, you know, at that complex on the edge of Wakefield there. They've disbanded, and so we have inherited that complex, and we're gonna do what we can to get that operational. So we will have a regulation-sized baseball field now back in our system because the East Twins is no longer using it, so we will have that facility to manage as well already, so.
Do you manage the signs that are up there now, too?
Well, we have to figure out what's going on with.
I was gonna say, there's one in memory of my brother, so don't take it away.
Okay. Yeah, we just have to, that's another thing on our to-do list is, you know, how we're going to reimagine East Twins, but that's for another meeting. Animal friendly, not quite sure what that means, but as long as your pets are on a leash, they're welcome to be in the park. Accessible, again, no bus, that I think refers to the purple line, no parking ramp. They like the addition of the bathroom and pickleball courts and a new toy. I'm not sure what that means either. But they liked option 2. Looking forward to the playground and more lights. They want more lights. The loop distance, map or signs, and that was a good comment to put, you know, like how long the loop is for people who are using it for exercise, just putting up signs like this many times around or this path is so many miles. People like to have that, so we would be intentional with our signage. Please keep the playground more than 50 feet away from homes, and yes, they absolutely will be. Even where it's proposed now, it's well over 50 feet away from the nearest home. Have the Harvest Park Trail connect with the Bruce Ventral Trail. Yeah, we talked about that. Shelter with restroom or bathroom and water would be great. Love the shelter. Please keep parking to a minimum on the south side. So they're leaning more toward the smaller parking lot. Eliminate at least one picnic area by the playground preferably. And then there needs to be a lot of trees and buffers around the playground, even fencing. And I think I already addressed that comment, that we definitely will be planting trees to offer shade, but fencing would not be something we've done before in our system, so we'd entertain it if someone really felt strongly, but I'd have to know why fencing would be necessary to fence in a playground. So then bocce ball and horseshoes, which is what we wanted to have on the north end. Paved trail of the gazebo, and she couldn't see, and this was the representative from the housing complex, and we did show her on the blown up side that there is actually a trail that goes right to that area, so she was very happy to see that. I prefer option 1. I would like no more than 10 parking spots and prefer option 1. Like the parking lot off of Jarvis, please no lights on the field. Again, a purple line comment, I'll just let that one be there, you can read that. Bigger playground or have a Z playground. And that was from the consultants, they weren't sure what that meant. I don't know what a Z playground is, but a larger playground is definitely planned for that park. Please, parking lot along Jarvis is great. Picnic in the area would be great too. Please, no lights. I like this option a lot, especially the bike skills course and all the soccer fields. Disc golf. And disc golf was something we thought about, but without trees and, making it'd be just kind of wide open. And a disc golf course, you want a few more challenges. And I don't know how challenging we could make a disc golf course on the south end of Harvest. But we have talked about installing one at Maplewood Heights potentially, and that was a park that looks like, if any, that there might be some traction to put a disc golf course at Maplewood Heights at some time in the future. Should have the softball, baseball field. I like bringing in other activities, disc golf, skate park, native plantings. Parking lot on the south side is great. Would love stormwater management, and that would be part of any plan. We would work with consultants to make sure that we're incorporating that into the plan. I would like to suggest having a natural area with walking paths. And then we need more areas with pollinator-friendly plants rather than just sterile monoculture grass. And again, speaking to the native seed garden, which is a really unique feature on the north end. And I think Urban Roots has the potential to expand. They use it 1.5 acres now, but they could potentially expand that on that end. So again, there's another picture of all the people. As you can see, it was just active engagement the whole time. So that is where we left it, and now the big job is to kind of turn it over to, if you want me to go back to anything, you want me to pull up the plans again, but I'm going to turn it over to the commission for you to have a discussion and talks about thoughts. And I will say, just to give a little direction in talking with staff and hearing all these comments, we feel like the option with the parking, it'd have to be what you think. It could be either of the parking options, but as far as what to put in that south end, we feel that a bike skills course would be a natural fit for that end. Like, for the reasons I said, it's not as permanent as a skate park. It doesn't mean that that wouldn't be an option too, but we feel like the bike skills course is something that residents have cared about enough to come to the Parks Commission and talk about. It's not something we have in our system. And we would do, if that was the direction you'd point us in, I know in Woodbury they have a course where a group actually came in, and the city of Woodbury let them have the space, but they came in and kind of oversaw it, ran it, and took care of it, and that might be an option to help the city, and it would be something where an active group would be passionate about using it, so we could explore that a little further. And then with the tie-in to the Bruce Vento Trail right there, and it just seemed like that night, at least with the people who showed up, that was what I was hearing. It may not necessarily show up on the Post-its, but I did hear that people seemed to like that as the best option. To either the passive space, or of the two, they preferred the bike skills course, and staff can see the benefits of the bike skills course, but again, it's open to consideration. So with that, I will turn it over to the commission and let you discuss.
I think it's really exciting to see the process from where we started to where we are right now. I think the fact that these pictures show how many people came out proves that this is a passion for quite a few different Maplewood residents. So I'm really glad that we had this event and gave them a chance to give feedback. Personally, I am in favor of the 40-stall parking lot. I know parking lots aren't necessarily attractive, but people need a place to park, and we want, as many people as we can to be able to utilize this park whenever they want. Definitely against putting any kind of fencing around it, because that's 100% exclusive and not inclusive in any way. I would never want to see a park with a fence around it. It just makes it feel private and not open space and not welcoming to everybody. Yeah, I'm really happy with where we are, and I'm excited to see how we can move forward with this project. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns?
I wanted to talk about parking too for a second. Do we know why some people don't want the more capacity parking design?
Chair, members of the commission, in the comments, I think there were some people that just didn't want any parking, and again, I think there was some confusion because people are still kind of tying the purple line into this discussion. And so I think some people came with no parking because they were thinking it was the park and ride lot, and those are the comments I heard for why they didn't want it.
Okay.
But otherwise, I wasn't quite sure because it wouldn't be right next to someone's house. It's on the part of the park there where it wouldn't be, so it would kind of alleviate even the overflow parking, because even the parking the way we have it now, you know, like I said, we don't want to reduce the parking lot down, but they still overflow that parking lot sometimes on the weekends, and people park along the other streets there by people's houses. So the comments I heard is they want parking on that south end so that that doesn't happen more, you know, where it's all just located in that part. So that's the only thing that I can think of that people just are still worried about when it was potentially a parking ramp, so they want no parking on that end.
Okay.
I don't know, Terry, did you hear?
I kind of got too that they didn't want parking on Jarvis, because they said even if you just went to one side parking, there's just too much parking on Jarvis, both sides of the street, and it's too congested in that little area there. And I walk that trail a lot, and there are a lot of cars that go up and down Jarvis.
Did you hear any comments there about why people wouldn't want a parking lot? Because that was the question. It's like,
Again, I think it's the I mean.
that was my impression.
That's what I got out of it too, is that they're worried that it's the purple line, but we've gone from a 2-story to a parking lot. If you're adding all this, if pickleball is huge now, so you're gonna need some space for people to park. You don't wanna walk in the street. They were saying, you know, you open the door and you have little kids, they run out into this street, and it's kind of a busy street there. I think that's more what they were thinking, more a parking lot.
Okay.
Even the parking lot that was there now, I heard several people say, could we put a speed bump or do something, because people come in and out of there so fast. I think they're just worried about the people coming and going in the parking lot and driving by
Okay.
there.
Yeah, because I just given like more picnic shelters and how many people would be using it, I feel like it makes sense that we would go with a larger capacity parking.
Because they're
in the
big
south
picnic
end.
shelters.
Yeah.
You have a family that comes with 10, 20 people,
Right.
you're going to use half your parking lot, and then nobody could use the rest.
and one thing to keep in mind too is if you went the route of the bike skills course, there are going to be people who want somewhere to park to do the bike skills course with trailers with their bikes on, and then jump on the Bruce Ventle Trail perhaps. So a parking lot on that end of the park might make sense for that reason as well.
And I don't think there really is too many areas on the Bruce Ventle Trail for people to park and actually get out and ride their bike. I mean, I live on the Bruce Ventle Trail, and I don't see a whole lot of places that, unless you parked like maybe at Weaver School, but there's really not a whole lot of places where you can park and get on that trail. Like the Gateway has a few places where you can park and stuff, but the Bruce Ventle does not really have, and it's used very heavily, so I think that would make sense to have, that'd be like a good point to put it at too, I believe. I personally would rather have a parking lot than a parking ramp, but that's my opinion.
Same.
Yeah, I will say, I can tell you definitively, there's still things up in there, but no matter what, there won't be a ramp. I mean, that was already eliminated. There won't be a parking ramp
And that I
regardless
heard a
of what
lot,
happens.
that was, I think, everybody's biggest fear. They were worried it would be
Yeah.
used for other things than parking, is what they said.
Yeah.
So I have a whole bunch of questions, but I kind of like the idea of the bike skills thing, and I don't think that it would be exclusive of putting some kind of pollinator thing in there, because I envision trails, you know, that they would ride with a lot of space in between the trails. And so I don't see that as being exclusive, you know, mutually exclusive. And I like the idea of having, you know, more pollinator space. I guess before I forget this thought, what are you looking from us for now? We approved the plan, now we've kind of reshuffled things. Are we going to put together, you know, where are we in this loop? I just want to understand that.
Right, and so bringing this to you tonight, wanted to share all the feedback, and again, if If it means another discussion, we can do it, but otherwise, if you come to a consensus about, which option for the south end of the park that you recommend, that we would take forward to the city council. I'm looking for some direction for what you're thinking, like if you absolutely are against, this, or you have a strong feeling one way or the other for the changes that staff proposed. We're looking for whether you hate them or not, like the moving of the shelters to the other side of the trail, not reducing the parking lot, and then putting some parking on the south end of the park. And then it's a lot of things. So those changes were the ones that staff proposed, and whether you recommend them or not. And then if you have a preference for option 1 or 2.
What about the parking here now? Is there going to be an area for bikes to park? Because a lot of people will be coming from the trail and stuff, a place to park their bikes.
Oh, Chair, members of the commission, yes, we will add
Have
bike
like a
racks.
bike
Yep.
racks, okay, perfect.
Regardless of the size of the parking lot or whatever, we would have bike racks in the park, absolutely.
I do want to talk about the skate park versus the bike course. Have we done additional research into one or the other, aside from the feedback from the community? And I'm asking because I know a lot of other surrounding cities have skate parks, and I know there's the one bike course in Woodbury. Do we have an idea on demand for one or the other?
Chair, members of the commission, good question. We have not, because again, this is kind of resurrecting the plan. We feel as staff that the plan was all but complete, the way we had it, but we thought of, with the whole purple line, it's still not decided yet, but just looking for a recommendation. But we have not done extensive research into one or the other before. We didn't want to put the cart before the horse. It's just, and again, whatever decision you make tonight, it wouldn't be binding. It would be your recommendation for what we should explore. Is kind of what what we're looking for. But we just had to start from somewhere to kind of bring this plan back, because back in 2020 we would have just presented it as is to the city council if we had kept going. And so we have kind of the benefit now of 4 years later retooling some things because it didn't get approved, and so that's where we're at now. And the biggest things are, again, staff has recommended that we don't diminish the parking lot, and that we add some kind of parking on the south end, and that we move the shelter to the other side of the trail. So if the commission only feels comfortable making a recommendation one way or the other about those key changes, and then wants more exploration for the others, we can do that. But it's just we wanted to hear from the community too and give them their chance. And like I said, it seemed like there's lots of different opinions. We never had that many people, but it did seem that night from what we had that more people favored some kind of activity on that end of the park. And like Craig said, you could even make a motion that we would include native plantings and whatever, if we did do like the bikes course or whatever, because like you said, it's not mutually exclusive. We could still not just put turf in between the bike trails. We could have different plantings and landscaping, and that would frankly cut down on some of the mowing and upkeep for park maintenance staff. So that would be, I'm sure, a win in their mind.
Had any, other than at this event, anybody ask us to do skateboard parks or anything? I know we've had people ask about bikes, but have we ever had anybody ask us to do skateboard stuff?
People have expressed interest in the past, but
Not as,
Not recent-
not as vocal
not
as-
recently,
Not as
but-
vocal as the bike.
I mean, there's always someone that's going to be, interested in that too. And I guess what we didn't want to do, it was kind of tough because we had gone through all that community process in 2020 and got to a point. So we don't want to, it was like how much engagement now is enough, because otherwise we could go down and
Go over and over, yeah.
it'd be a year, we could go through this all over again, but we feel like we got to a place, we heard but
I
there are a
just
few
feel like-
tweaks that staff recommended on top of what we already went through with the process, and so we've kind of narrowed it down to these things, and we're curious what the public would say about that end of the park. And
As I've personally been on for over 11 years, and I've never really heard anybody say anything about a skateboard. How about you, Craig? You've been here forever. I've never heard the skateboard being brought up. I've heard disc golf being brought up before. I've heard dog parks being brought up before. I've heard bike, but I have never heard skateboard myself.
We
Yeah,
did, we
I
did have
think
some
that-
people in the park systems master planning process with all the amenities. It was listed, like we had a huge long list, and skate park was on there.
On
It
there.
wasn't super high on the list, but it was represented. There were
Okay.
some people that wanted it.
Okay. But I just wanted to, because I know I've heard the bike thing being asked before, so that's
And
why.
it doesn't mean that we couldn't do a skate park at another
Right.
location in the future. Again, just for what it's worth, the staff is thinking, again, a skate park, putting one in, that's a pretty permanent feature. I mean, you're putting concrete and you're putting, whereas depending with the bike skills course, and again, we'd have to determine, we'd have to bring it back when we did, like, what would this bike course look like? We'd still get feedback and engagement of what that might look like, but it could be less permanent in the park, and so it would fit the topography on that end of
I
the
was gonna
park
say, it'd
too,
be
because
great
there's
to
a
have
lot
it
of.
With the bike trail right there, I think it would be more family-oriented to bring to a park
Yeah.
that has playgrounds and stuff would be
Yeah.
more family.
So like I said, we could go down the engagement path again, but we really got to a point where it was already recommended by the commission, but we still felt a few recommended changes made sense, but, you know, you don't want to start the process all over again, because we kind of are at that point where, again, the plan was recommended, but it doesn't hurt to be smart and look at it 4 years later, what could we tweak, and that's kind of where we're at, and it's an unusual situation, because we had the whole Rush Line, now Purple Line, as a maybe, and it seemed like a sure thing, and now it's not, so we're kind of in a unique position.
Todd, what do you think?
So one thing that I would like to bring up is I know there is a skate park in Little Canada by the old fire station. So it's not the closest, but yeah, there is one that is reasonably close. And another thing we might want to consider is visibility of the biking trails, whether this is via like a sign from the Bruce Vento Trail. Because I know that if I'm biking along on the Bruce Vento Trail and I see a mountain bike skills area, if I saw that sign, I would definitely turn and go if I had free time. So that could attract a lot more people, or even, especially if it's even visible from the trail. So that's what I'd like to add.
Well, that's a great point, and as far as, you know, getting the youth perspective, like, what would your thoughts be? Bike skills course versus skate park?
Yeah,
Do you have an
I
opinion
would
on?
definitely go with bike skills, and especially with the proximity of the Little Canada skate park. And I have not really heard of a huge demand, but I know about half a dozen people who would be excited about mountain biking at a skills park if we had one.
Thank you, great comment.
I think we all are kind of leaning towards the bike skills. Is there anyone here that wants to discuss it further between the two?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm not asking for us to engage the community again. I was just wondering if there were other data points that we could consider, and if we don't have that, that's fine. Yeah, I don't want to just say, well, I heard a few people say this, and now we're going to go this route, so,
Sure.
you know.
Yep, no, and I totally understand that, Chair, members of the commission. It was kind of like, how do we go back and engage people again, even though we've done it? And so, and that's why we heavily publicized this open house. And again, it may not seem like a ton of people, but for a meeting like this, I mean, you can put these out and you get 5 or 6 people, so to get this many was great to have. But it's just tough to engage everyone, and so we like, just so you know, the process I mailed the letter to 200 homes around the park, which is more than we usually have required, but 200 homes that lived in the area, and then we put it on social media and put it out there and put it in the, out into whatever format we could to get the feedback. But I feel pretty confident because of, you know, the community engagement that we did before, that the other pieces are good, but this is a new twist, so I get what you're saying, but.
I know even if you look at like the younger generation or whatever with the skateboard parks and stuff, my son was huge into all that kind of stuff 10, 15 years ago, and there were always stores and stuff, and they all were buying, but now it seems like everybody's buying bikes, I've noticed. I don't even see all the skateboard stores around as much.
My
Do you?
kids don't ride bikes.
Don't they? Oh, okay. Do they skateboard?
They do scooters and skateboards, but we also live on a hill, so maybe
Okay,
that's-
okay.
And there is a skate scooter park. I don't know what you'd officially call it. Shoreview, in that big Shoreview Commons park
Okay.
outside of their community center, they have an area, and I've been to that park a few times, and there's definitely a set of kids that'll use that, it's by the playground, but, again, there's so many neat amenities that I would love to have in all of our parks, and it doesn't mean we couldn't do either one of them at another
Right.
park at another date, but it's just kind of trying to decide what
What
fits
would-
best into Harvest
into that
Park
park.
with what we have, and keep in mind, budget would be a factor too. What would be most cost-effective and fit in that section of the
Is
park.
there a bigger insurance risk with a skate park? Safety?
Again, that's something I don't have an answer
Okay,
for
I was gonna
today.
say, I was just at a skate park today just because we were driving home from Duluth and we just stopped to let the dogs out and we stopped at a skate park and I was looking at the equipment and I'm thinking, this stuff looks dangerous.
I mean, wouldn't that
It
be
was
the
an old
same
one,
For a
yeah.
bike though too, like a bike course might be the same.
And it would all
question.
depend what kind of course we would do.
Yeah.
Like, we just haven't dove into it yet
Okay.
because we're just trying to, and we wanted to see what the public felt. And again, at the open house, I feel fairly confident saying that even though it's not on the posted comments, that a lot of people were talking about, it seemed to me that they much preferred the idea of a bike skills course because it seemed a more natural fit into the park, not so much infrastructure, and they seemed more open to that at this time, so.
Yeah, we usually spend a lot of time on a park of this size, and you've kind of thrown a couple of options here, but I don't see what the old option was. I would like to have, spend some time saying, this is what we had before, and these are the changes, and maybe you went through pretty quick, and then maybe you did say that these are the only changes that we made to the original plan, but.
Oh, on the south end there?
Well, on the whole park, I mean, how much does this deviate from our original master plan of this park?
Yeah, and let me go back to those slides.
I know that some of
No.
the playgrounds moved and the park.
Well, the playground moving was all part of the original plan. Like I said, the things that moved, and that's why, now you can see the trouble with the open house, it's a lot of information so
So a lot of it stayed the
October
same.
2019, project kickoff, and then the planning, so existing conditions. So this is what we currently have in the park right now, on the left-hand side there. And so it's, it used to, remember way back, it used to be the food group came and they had the urban ag plots, and that was 3.5 acres on the north end of the park, and then they went down to the 1.5 acres is now being used by the Urban Roots, the native seed garden. And these two ball fields are actually already gone, so that just shows the existing park, sorry about that, but we have the one field left here is the one we're talking about. So the biggest change would be, so if you look to the right, it's probably easier just to go to the right-hand side of this slide. So we had, back in 2020, the plan that the commission recommended, or voted to recommend, was bocce ball courts or lawn games, more passive recreation on that north end, because the housing complex hadn't been built yet. It's there now, but it wasn't at that time. But doing the prairie and pollinator demonstration area, Urban Roots there, fitting in the potential for 2 practice fields. And again, these are soccer fields that will, there will be irrigation in the park, which is going to be a plus for Harvest, because right now it's tough to keep any kind of quality field there because there's no irrigation. Well, not this year, but other years. Now we have plenty of irrigation lately. But putting that in, so it was heavily focused on just adding more soccer fields because of Hazelwood, and just the use of soccer had just grown exponentially. And then, as you can see, the parking lot was going to be reduced down. So if you look on the left, that's the parking lot as it exists today. The parking lot would have been reduced down. And then we had that shelter, the 75-person capacity shelter with the restrooms and the storage area would have been in that area where the parking lot was reduced. And then we had kept this field in there because the other fields were gone, so it would have been just keeping one. But again, the usage in the last 4 years, there just hasn't been a demand for it. But what is in demand at Harvest is green open space for the volleyball groups that want to play and the other things that they do. So the plan we approved, the shelter was on that side of the trail. The parking lot was reduced down, but we still had, as you can see D right here, the playground was still proposed to be there. with the trails, and then more soccer here, and then this was the purple line. This whole section where we're looking at either putting the bike skills course or the skate park was reserved for the purple line. But we always had talked about turning the pickleball complex there, the tennis courts, into the 6 pickleball courts, keeping the basketball court. But we hadn't proposed any extra parking. But the parking lot, or the playground was going to move down. We were still going to have a couple of features up on the hill where the playground currently is, and we had talked about things like a swing or, just the small things, because it's a nice seating area away from if people wanted to do something quiet, but it wouldn't be the main playground anymore. And so that is the plan and then as you can see, it's tough to see, but the paths meander all the way, through the park, so there's good trail connections, and then there was lighting all along the trails so that people could use the park in the fall and winter months and early spring. And then we had still proposed the lights on the soccer field. So all of that, none of that has changed since 2020. The changes that we did make, or propose, staff proposed, was to move that shelter, keep the parking lot the size it is now. And option 1 and 2 both said that, do not reduce that parking lot down, it is used too much. And then moving that shelter onto the other side of the trail where that one existing, the last softball field is, and then converting the rest of that to open space, because there was a demand for more open space, so not just the section next to it, but having open space in that area as well. So it would just create more open space, because that seems to be the need for the park as it's evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. So leave the parking the way it is, move that shelter to the other side of the trail, open space, and then down on the south end, putting some kind of parking in regardless of what happens with the purple line, because there really is a need. If they move the purple line to White Bear Avenue or whatever ends up happening, we still need parking on that end of the park if we're going to have an active pickleball complex, the basketball court, and whatever we decide to do with that south corner. And that's the big question, is what do we envision there? Do we want just the native, the passive area with just more trails? Or do we want to put something active in the park, because it's our chance, because that is a community athletic park, and do we want it to be focused on, pursuing a bike trail course of some kind, or a skate park? Those were just options we threw out there for something for people to voice their opinions on, so it wasn't just like open-ended, and that was from a staff recommendation of the options that were out there. We thought those would be 2 things that could fit in that area, and then we wanted people to weigh in on it. So that is what has changed, but the rest of it is all what was already in the plan. And then, so we'll go down to option 1. As you can see, it's still, as you can see it like that, see how small the parking lot was there? So option 1 and 2, the only difference between 1 and 2 is that south end of what could go there. So the parking lot would stay the size, and as you can see now, the trail is on the other, or the shelter is on the other side of the trail, and it creates more open space. There is the opportunity for a practice soccer field as well, which is B, but it doesn't have to go there. It could still just be large open space. So if there was a volleyball tournament or something, there would be space to do that. But the playground was still in the same spot. But then they worked in the parking lot. So this parking lot here, was the smaller lot, and then they were proposing just a meandering trail. So really, it would be trails to connect the rest of the park to the south end, but there wouldn't be an active feature there. And there could be a small shelter, a picnic shelter and tables at the center of a restored prairie that fills the corner, interpretive trails, and then the small parking lot. And so that's one option. And then when you go to option 2, it was basically is we want something more active in that corner. And what you could do potentially, as if you're not comfortable with which one, you could perhaps make a recommendation of whether you want it to be a passive area or if you want something more active, and then say that you would prefer an option that has a skate park or a bikes course and leave it at that, and then direct staff to do some more research like Vicki said and come back with all the questions you have. That could be a recommendation if you wanted to. But it'd be kind of like, what direction do you want to go in?
It sounds like a lot of us are in favor of option 2 because it gives us the skate park / bike skills course option. I mean, I just feel like that's what I'm hearing from people.
And more parking.
And one
And
thing
more,
we,
yeah,
they,
the
they do
40.
recommend here is if you did go with option 2, they would recommend the larger parking lot because you're
Right.
adding active features on that end of the park, so the 20 stall parking lot would not
Right.
be adequate. So if that's the way the commission is leaning, you know, even if they give a recommendation that way, that would be helpful, and then staff could, you know, whatever you decide. So does that give some clarification?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll turn it back to you.
Is that picnic shelter on the original plan, the one in the south end?
Let's go back. I believe we moved that.
No, it's added one, I thought.
Yep,
Picnic shelter.
it would be a small,
See, you added one.
yep, I missed that, sorry about that, yep. Added it as a potential, it wouldn't mean we'd have to put it there, but it made sense if it was the,
I like it.
I
mean,
think-
I
I
don't
think
know
what
that we
we
have enough
added-
money for all of these things,
well,
but
and it says it's a shelter, but it actually came out of that representation for sunshade, so I think it's put as a shelter in here, but we did hear the comment to put some kind of sun shelter for people who are waiting to play pickleball, and I think that's where that came out of, so it's looking like a shelter, but some kind of respite from the sun while you're waiting to play, so that was the shelter that we were talking about, and I think they just decided to put that as but it could be a 25 person capacity shelter, or it could be benches with a sunshade, that could be up for interpretation, but just something, because there weren't a lot of trees down there, and they wanted a place for people to sit and be out of the sun while they're waiting to play basketball or pickleball. And it's just on here as a shelter for now, but we are calling it a sun shelter.
so what year are we proposing to do this?
Well, again, with the park, we have to come up with a plan for the things, but it would have to be done in installments, because we obviously don't have all the money to do this all at once. And what staff would recommend is, but we want to know where things could be placed so we could start doing them. Like, we didn't want to just replace the playground until we had a plan for where it should go. But the first things we would recommend that we would do are the pickleball courts and the playground for sure, because there's the need for the people. There was a gentleman at the open house who was a passionate pickleball player, and he helped get other groups going in other cities, and the place where he played, they told him there's such demand that they told him, well, I'm sorry, you're not a resident, so now he can't play in the place that he helped get things going. And he said, I'm 78 years old, I want to live long enough to be able to play pickleball in Maplewood. So I said, well, we're going to do our best. So that is what we would recommend, is, starting with converting the courts and getting that set up. Probably, even though it's not the glamorous thing, is figuring out the parking so that we'd have that in place, so we don't end up with a situation like Goodrich where we put in a playground and then we didn't have the parking and we did the parking lot after. And then, but the playground, putting it next to, that would probably be the first thing, is just getting that old playground taken out and putting in the accessible playground. And then it depends on the funding, just like with any CIP project, you can have the idea if we did everything on this plan, and again, if you direct us to go toward more option 2, we'd be looking at the cost, but it probably be, upwards of $3 million and more to do everything on here, which we don't have all at once, but we would have to phase it in. But then we would have a plan to start with so that we could plan the future CIP years of what we can implement. That's kind of how it works, but we definitely wouldn't be able to afford to do everything all at once. So it would be gradual. And then every time we added an amenity, we'd be bringing it back to you for your thoughts.
So would you bring it back to us to help prioritize these?
Sure.
Okay, I like that, and I like the changes that have been made, and it's, I don't see any downside with this versus the previous. I see a lot of upside versus the previous plan, because I was never in favor of the parking in that, the huge parking in that corner. I don't think it's appropriate use for park space. So I guess I would be ready to make a recommendation that, you know,
Yeah, I do want to say too, I think that playground is in such rough shape. I think that's
Right.
a good thing as a top priority, as well as the pickleball, because I feel like we are already behind on getting up to speed on that trend. So,
Right.
those would be my two top priorities too.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to recommend plan option 2?
If that's,
I'll make that
Yeah.
motion.
I
Second.
second. Craig second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Passed.
great discussion. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. And speaking of replacing playgrounds, we will segue into all right. So we are going to talk about playground replacement at Coleman Park. And this is just a little refresher I like to put in there from our park systems plan, because we're doing the review and it's important. In the executive summary of our master plan, it says taking care of the existing system is the highest community priority. This means reinvesting in and upgrading parks and facilities. Essential is creation and implementation of an asset management plan, which we have. This will allow the city to anticipate and prioritize replacement of recreation facilities at the end of their functional life cycle. Reinvestment in parks throughout the city so that all residents have access to welcoming parks with relevant recreation activities is a high community priority. And that asset management system that we use is called OpenGov, but formerly Cartograph. And one of the things that we do is we rate the playgrounds. Every year we have 2 to 3 staff at any given time that are certified playground inspectors, and they do the inspections. We have not completed all the inspections for 2024. We're getting there, but it's been a year just. However, these are the inspections, and I've shown you this before from last year. And you can see down there, Poor Harvest Playground is dead last with Hazelwood. And those, again, are waiting for these plans to move forward. So that's another good reason to move forward with Harvest. And then you can see that Lower Sunset and Upper Sunset, where they're being replaced now. The equipment is at the park. They're just waiting for us to be able to, the park to draw out enough for us to haul the Class 5 in, because we have to bring Class 5 into the playground container, because that container, if any of you have seen it now that it's empty, is so deep. And we found there was, 2 feet of sand in some places. And the typical is 12 to 15 inches. So they just, back in the day, they did things to the hilt. And so we had to get all that sand out of there, haul it somewhere else. And to install the playground properly, we have to bring some Class 5 in. But with all this rain and how soggy things are on the trail, it's like these 1-ton trucks. We have to be so careful. And so we haven't been able to, but we're right on the edge. So when it finally dries out, we can get the Class 5 in, and we can get the playground put up. And the equipment was delivered to the park today. So hopefully it's all going to come together shortly. But anyway, so that playground, these are just 2023 because we're not done for this year. But what I did want to say is, in the meantime, Coleman, last year, it had a much higher rating. It was a rating of 50, so it wouldn't have been the absolute first choice for replacement. But however, since that happened, since last year, we've made multiple repairs to the wood compound. That's just the brand. And it's tough to see, but in the first picture, you can see the whole wood structure there. It's similar to what they had at Robin Hood and out at Maple Crest. It's just old equipment. We had to remove that entire structure just recently because we found that there was, it had come apart. It wasn't safe, and so we can't fix it anymore. We couldn't replace it. The footings were bad, and so we had to completely remove it and reevaluating. So that was the first playground that was inspected, and it went down to a 27.7 as far as rating. So it jumped to the head of the pack for a playground that needs to be replaced. And we can't replace the hardware anymore. Some of the bolts and things have gotten rust and wear and tear over the years, so we can't even safely take it apart if we wanted to. So when something goes bad, we have to just remove it. And what's on the right there, I took this picture the other day. So that whole section is gone now. There's just this and the swing bay left. And also this container, it's sand, and it's in the corner of the park. It's not in an ideal spot. It's not near the parking lot at all. It's like you have the parking lot and you got to go across the grass and it's tucked in a corner. So again, for accessibility, we would want to move that closer to the parking lot, make it more visible. So for those reasons, we're recommending that this would be the playground in 2024, that we start the, engagement and engage the neighbors and get a playground plan picked out so that this one can be our one that gets replaced. And so, again, it just ended up jumping to the, oops, sorry about that. And, gonna start it again here. Don't know why. I clicked on the wrong thing. So kind of straightforward. This one just kind of took away all doubt for what playground we think as staff that should be replaced next. And this neighborhood has really changed in the last few years. There's a lot of new families that have moved into this neighborhood, and they've been asking, and they are very vocal, and they email me a lot, like, what's going to happen at Coleman? Can we get a new playground? Can we, do something at our park? And so it just, and then when this piece broke and we had to take it out, it made sense. Edgerton was also one that needed one, but we've had some preliminary talks with the school district, and that's still a process, because we want to engage them to, like, what that playground will look like, because the school, for some of you who don't know, the school uses that as their playground. They don't have a separate playground. They use Edgerton Park. So it's used by the whole school every day, all year round, even when they have summer programs and stuff. So we've approached District 623 to see what they might want to do with us to envision that play area, because, we could just replace the playground with the budget we have. And, this year, it's $130,000 like we had last year. Next year, we have $140,000 set aside for a playground, but it's not going to get you a whole lot. And out at Edgerton, they've got that whole blacktop area, and then there's potential to tie it into the gardens and the park and just make it a nice play area, for the next 25 years. So we're hoping to engage the school district further. And that one would have been the one, but then when Coleman came in at the next lowest rating, besides Harvest and Hazelwood, and so this seemed like a good fit for all of those reasons. So,
Audra, for Coleman, since the location is moving, would there be the potential to get rid of the sand base?
oh, yep, Chair, members of the commission, we're getting rid of all of our playgrounds that have the sand as their base. Yeah, it would be, with the budget for this park, I can't imagine it wouldn't be engineered wood fiber, the chips, because if we went with another surface, we wouldn't have much left for any of the play features because it's so expensive. But
Okay.
I think we can do a nice playground. But like I said, we would move it out of that corner and put it closer to the parking lot. And then it would be engagement with, the community. It's just kind of to get the recommendation from the commission, how you feel about Coleman being, the next playground for replacement. This is just for those reasons. That's why staff feels like this would be the choice, but we wanted to bring it to the commission to get your input.
Would you engage Edgerton School from just an ideas perspective or potentially a financial perspective?
For both.
Okay.
Yep, just to see if are grants available, if we're two entities that apply. I mean, just to see what, and we've had we had a quick site meeting, and then we had an initial Teams meeting with stakeholders, with our Public Works Director, myself, and some members of the district. But, we have to circle back, and their PTA was involved too. So just seeing what we could do, so we don't just go plop a playground down when there could be a larger opportunity to do something better out there that would be beneficial for the school and the community. And that one would involve probably a little more community engagement, because you'd have the school engagement, but it's also a public park, so it would be the residents as well, and just trying to find that match. So that's why we wanted to start the conversation sooner than later, with knowing that we think Coleman should be next, but we've started those conversations with District
Edgerton,
6.
I wonder if we did this, Craig was on it too, for Weaver, the parents put that playground together.
It's coming out this year.
It is? I remember
They're
us
getting a
putting
new
it
one already?
together.
Wow.
Should
Yeah,
have a meeting
but-
of all the parents that helped to kind of commemorate the end
Yes,
of the
that would be
era.
fun, yeah, seems like it was just yesterday
Right.
though, doesn't it?
And
Yeah,
then
but-
for
but if
those
you
of you,
got Edgerton's family, it meant more to us, I think, and it meant more to our students that we put I mean, I still bring my little nephew up there and everything because it means something. You put time into that.
Yep, a community build could definitely be
Yeah,
possible.
it would be something I would ask Edgerton bring up to their families.
Yep, and then just for people who don't know, it's that unique situation of Maplewood. Edgerton's actually in the Roseville School District, even though it's a Maplewood Park, it's District 623. So,
So are we looking for a motion to go ahead and do Coleman next then?
just turning it back to the commission for any questions or comments, and then yes for a recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we put the Coleman Park Playground project as the next in line.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
I just like, if we do a community engagement, can you make sure we all know when that is? Because I think it was
Yep.
really helpful to be at that.
Sure.
I have a comment about, I know that Coleman has come before us several times from residents, and we've been putting them off, I mean, far more than probably any other park. I mean, just from my recollection, so I'm definitely in favor of.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. We have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Passed.
Okay.
Next, we are on to unfinished business. It looks like.
Oh, Chair, members of the commission, we have that item that I
Oh,
added to
yep,
the
sorry, I
list.
forgot the added item. We need to discuss the bus tour.
Yes. So, I mean, as someone commented earlier, the year is flying by, but you had mentioned to me back early on about moving the bus tour up earlier in the year. And in looking at dates and times and all the things that we have going on, I wanted to throw this out as an option that if we do the bus tour earlier, that we do it in July. But we could do it because we already have a Celebrate Summer event, we have the 4th of July, people are busy traveling. I would like to propose that we do the bus tour in lieu of our July meeting and do it on that Wednesday. And so that would be July 17th, I believe. Let me double check again. And then we could, with the thought that we could start earlier. And then I just wanted to get your input on how early would you want to start? Because we're always, in the past, we're kind of aware of people having to work and whatever, but it's kind of up to the commission about when you think you might want to start the bus tour.
I would say, what's the earliest everyone's comfortable with?
Yep, and I will turn it over to you for discussion if you like that idea and time-wise.
I work remote, so I can go pretty much any time.
And keep in mind, I know Commissioner Schmidt is not here, but she did want me to, she made a point of saying that we would want to invite other commissions and other people along. So if we do that, maybe not too early in the day, but.
5?
Fine.
That's what I was going to say.
5 is about
Yeah.
because we want to get a lot of participation, and
People do work.
before 5 would be,
Yeah.
I think, tough for a lot of people. I'm retired, so I don't care, but
Right.
I think we want to get as many.
And doing it
people as we
earlier,
can.
the sun's in the sky longer, so
Right.
it does give us more time.
What did
so-
we do last year? 6?
No, it was actually earlier. I think it
Oh,
was like
earlier.
4:30, because we were doing it toward the
Oh.
end of
Oh, yeah,
August, and
'cause-
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that might have been tough for some people, but, and again, I'm open to whatever works for you, but I think if we want to do it, it should be in place of our July meeting, just so
Yep.
for everyone's schedule, it's because of so many things, and then we could,
On the other hand, we do get a lot more sunlight in July. I mean, probably at least an hour to an hour and a half more than we
Right.
did last.
Yeah.
so if you
Yeah.
started
So
at
I'm just
5,
asking, do we, I'm okay with any time, but
I feel like we're rushed though at the end and we always
yeah, you're
don't
right.
finish
We
our.
always have to skip
So
stuff.
I say we do 5. We give everybody enough notice
Yep.
right away. All the commissions get something out to them like
I'm
by
looking
Monday.
at-
And then that gives them time to plan.
our bus tour last year, we loaded the bus at 4:15, because we got going at 4:30.
Okay.
Yep, and we didn't get to finish everything.
No,
We
so-
haven't the last few years, so, no, we
No,
never do.
so we could keep it that same time, knowing we have extra time on the other end, or we could move it to 5 to make it a little easier for some people. I will leave it up to the commission to decide. I'm open to whatever you
I think
decide.
with more daylight, we can start at 5 and we'll have a better opportunity to get engagement from more people.
I say 5.
I mean, keep the bus till late.
Yeah,
I mean, because,
Yeah.
Don't cut it off as early, maybe go longer.
yeah.
well, yeah, I've been,
How
Yeah,
long
once
did
it
we go
got
last
dark,
year?
it was, we got back and it
was
was,
dark.
it was starting to get dark. We stayed out as,
Right, right.
yeah.
But I mean, what time, so we did 4:30 to what, do we know?
Yeah, I think we were back at,
probably 8.
I have to look. I have to go back one more email. Hang on one sec. We did it 4:30 to 7.
Okay, I think we could do 5 to 8 at least, maybe even 8:30, yeah. We
And
got
keep the
sunlight.
bus till at least 8:30.
5 to 8:30?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm gonna write that
I mean,
down.
they could even, I don't know how, it'll be late at 9.
Yep.
I don't know what,
No, I think that, because it would give people more of a chance to get there, 5 to
but we
8:30.
also don't want to have.
To at least
traffic.
8:30 and, yep.
right.
I mean, I give them the expectation that it might go to 8:45 or something like that.
And then-
That way they can plan.
And then another question, I mean, it's nice to stop, but it does take some time away. Are you interested in having the stop for dinner, or would you want something where we could eat on the bus and keep going?
I like to stop for dinner, it gives us a chance to communicate and easier and.
Okay.
That's
So the
just
only
me,
thing, the only
it's one
thing
of
I
those.
would say is then, yeah, I mean, 5 to 8:30, that still gives us 3.5 hours. That gives you a whole extra hour to. So 5 to 8:30 and stop to eat.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, then we will make that our July 17th meeting.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. And I don't think you have to do a formal motion, but it sounds like everybody is on board for it. All right. And then I mentioned this to Jason earlier, but with, we always try to do some chapter review, but I knew our discussions tonight would be long about the 2, so I wanted to do chapter 4. It was short, so I did throw chapter 5 into the packet in case we had time, but I'm thinking with the time that it is, that we can just review chapter 4, because it's a nice kind of summary of, it fits really well into the things we've talked about tonight, so if everyone's fine with that, I think we'll just go over chapter 4 for tonight, because chapter 5 is pretty in-depth, and I think that could be a meeting in itself. Let's see. So I'm going to pull, if I can have the computer again. So switching to that. So chapter 4 of the Park Systems Master Plan, as we're reviewing them all, is the Where Are We Going chapter. And it just goes over our Parks and Recreation, at the time our mission, which I will read. The Parks and Recreation Department's mission is to provide diverse recreational opportunities for people of all ages and abilities, enhance and preserve parks, facilities, and open spaces while promoting environmental stewardship through education and outreach. The mission defines the department's purpose and direction. And then we had a vision statement as well. And our vision statement in 2015 was the vision for the Parks and Recreation System and the supporting guiding principles outlined in this plan are aspirational and describe where the Parks and Recreation System wants to go over the next 20 years. The vision and principles are based on community and stakeholder input, current plans such as the Maplewood Comprehensive Plan, and a detailed, you can get up here, evaluation of the opportunities and challenges facing parks and recreation in Maplewood. And then our actual vision statement, I can just read it again, to help create a vibrant community that embraces diversity, celebrates arts and culture, values health and wellness, and promotes stewardship of the environment. And I think that vision statement is held up pretty well. I remember at the time there was a lot of thought that went into, what are we trying to say and what's the why for our department. And then our guiding principles is that vision recognizes 4 critical elements of the Parks and Recreation System: diversity, arts and culture, health and wellness, and environmental stewardship. Together, these elements contribute to a vibrant community. The recommendations and strategies in the following chapter use 6 underlying guiding principles that will help realize this vision. And I liked how we broke this down. These were important concepts that our parks our system is safe and welcoming, and that we maintain cleanliness and overall quality, design and maintain safe facilities, and make facilities and programming welcome to all. So that was at the forefront of things that we want to keep in mind. And then connect people and places. So connecting people and places is one of the things Maplewood's Parks and Recreation System can do best by building connections between bikeways, trails, and sidewalks, and by building connections between residents by providing places and events for community gathering. And some of the things that we said that we would do would be construct a network of trails and sidewalks that connect within Maplewood and to surrounding communities, create community and neighborhood gathering places, such as the Wakefield Community Building, picnic shelters, the plan for harvest that we looked at tonight, creating the shelters and a place for families to gather and celebrate and do activities. Preserve areas of historic value, which is why the Brun Trip, the farm is still an important feature and is very valued in our system. Connect parks and natural areas, establish effective and accessible communication, and ensure accessibility for all ages and abilities. So we always try to keep, how can we make things more accessible and more inclusive for as many people as possible? We can't do all the things, but we always keep that in the forefront when we're planning anything. And so you can see a picture of the trail by the Beaver Creek Preserve. That's a picture of the community center. And then another one of these is encourage health and wellness. And the link between health and an active lifestyle is well established. Increased computer use, sedentary jobs, and increased driving has led to less active lifestyles with troubling health implications, such as increased obesity levels, heart disease, and diabetes. And it goes on to just say how much, we want to value health and wellness. So some of the things that we wanted to do would be provide a mix of culturally relevant recreational activities throughout the city, provide a variety of indoor and outdoor recreational programming, offer recreation facilities and programming at the Maplewood Community Center that meet the current needs. And while that's changed in how we do it, we still have, a close relationship and partnership with the community center, and they still are carrying on all of those values as well. And expand partnerships to provide additional recreation options. And so we do things like our agreement with like the rugby group, or our agreement with the Urban Roots and any way we can partner, our potential partnering with Edgerton for the playground, like always trying to find those community partners to push our mission along and do what we want to do. And then promote environmental stewardship. Maplewood is known for leadership in the environmental stewardship. Continued education, demonstration, and access to high-quality natural areas will continue to be a defining feature of the city and underpin all parks and recreation decision-making. And some of the things that we've, committed to doing would be preserve quality natural resources, provide access to natural resources so residents can enjoy and learn about nature, increase native plant diversity to create healthy habitats, and encourage sustainable design and maintenance on public and private property. And you can see that in our open spaces and preserves with, making sure we get prescribed burns done, making sure we take care of invasive species, the campus pollinator project, all the things we do, we're always keeping that in mind. We're doing several projects at Carver and Maplewood Preserves, out at Fish Creek, so we're always trying to do what we can to preserve our natural areas. And again, that's the workout area at the community center, and this is the shoreline buffer around the pond at City Hall as it looked in 2015. And then inspired creativity and learning. And you can read that. I won't read all of this, but you can, one thing the things we've committed to doing under this would be integrate public art throughout the system. That's something that we haven't done a lot of, but we can do more of, but it's still an aspiration of us to do. Collaborate with organizations and individuals to provide artistic and cultural activities, teach about nature and promote environmental stewardship, create places that foster creativity, encourage and support volunteerism, continue scholarship programs to promote participation. And on that note, even though recreation has largely left our department per se in-house, we still continue our scholarship program for people that take part in some of the other programs, so we still have that as an option whenever we can. And we work with whatever group we're using to see if they can offer scholarships as well. Educate residents about the quality of life and benefits of parks and recreation. Oh, then that was I used to love the dance recitals. That's one of the dance recitals at the community center. One of my favorite days. And then being financially sustainable. Realizing the community vision for Parks and Recreation will take additional resources. And appropriate funding and reinvestment is needed to extend the benefits of the park system. And some of the things under this category that, we look into and try to do is ensure stable and sufficient funding to meet system goals, build partnerships within and outside of the city, maintain appropriate staff to achieve its mission and vision, use volunteers to extend capabilities, and plan annually for the maintenance and replacement of facilities. And you've seen some of that in motion tonight with what we're doing. And I'll give a little shout out to the Maplewood North Lions, just groups like that come and help volunteer at our special events, and community members that are willing to come out and volunteer. We have a volunteer planting out at the Nature Center for the pollinator plantings around the bird feeding station that Todd was a huge part of. You'll have to come out there again, Todd, soon, because we've now put the pavers around it, and they're getting ready. They're actually doing a planting tomorrow to increase that natural area. And the plants that your group did as part of your Scout project they're growing great this year. They've just taken off. So just dealing with, whether it's the Eagle Scout project or other volunteers, it really helps do what we do and make things better for everyone. So that's kind of a summary of, where we're going and the guiding principles for what we're doing. So any comments on this from the commission? But I thought that would be kind of a good way to cap off what we've been talking about tonight. And then, again, the next chapter would be the strategic plan, like how ways we can get from A to B to C. So.
I guess I did have a question.
Sure.
I know that you had, you had briefly mentioned, some of the, public art.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that, I know that hasn't been incorporated a lot recently, but is there any plans on incorporating it more into the parks?
It's something that we could focus more on, to be honest with you. It's not something that has really, again, not using the last 4 years as an excuse, but just getting kind of back in the swing of things. But it's definitely something always in the forefront of how can we incorporate, public art into what we do. And some of it was more when we were doing in-house recreation more, but also with facilities, there's always a way that we could do more. So it's something we should definitely explore.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. We did at one point, it's quite a while ago, but we tried to put some sculptures into a couple of the parks, and they disappeared. Not that doesn't mean that we can't do anything, but you have to be careful about how you go about doing it. And maybe if you did it inside of, some of our buildings, that might, it just depends what you do and what you're thinking about, but with ours.
Right.
But we did make an attempt.
Right.
And it didn't go particularly well.
The one example I can point to as you're leaving tonight is the sculpture that's right outside in the rain garden. It looks lovely with the plants around. Our gardeners actually picked plants that kind of mimic the sculpture a little, but they're flowering right now. And that was actually a sculpture done by a local artist where she hammers the steel by hand, and it's pretty cool. And it's right outside the door. And that was one of our forays into public art. So you can take a look at that on your way out. Any other comments? Okay.
It looks like next we have visitor presentations. I don't think there are any. Commission presentations. Anybody have anything?
I just wanted to say, after we went over the plan for Harvest Park, I noticed in the last 11 years, I've heard this more than once, and I know Harvest Park is not the place probably for this, but as we're planning other parks, maybe just to keep it in the back, I've heard a lot about places for dogs and disc golf, both more than other things, and just maybe keep it out there. Again, Harvest Park probably is not the place to put this. And then I did want to mention, I spoke to somebody this week who has an autistic child, and they were telling me how it is so important that she finds a park that has like a certain, one certain thing in that park where he can go just fiddle with it. He's 14, but she's got 6 kids, and the other kids can go play in the playground, and he'll just sit on a bench and not do anything unless he finds like one thing or one quiet spot. So it's really important that we maybe try to add like it seems like autism and ADHD and all that is very common nowadays, and I think we should maybe kind of put that in when we do go plan our playground area.
There are some nonprofit groups in the Twin Cities that actually like design specific things for kids with autism. I know that they do it for more like indoor things, but maybe that's something that our
And it's not like they need a big area, they just need like one small thing that they just stay focused on, or they can be away from everybody else. They don't like the noise or something.
Okay, thank you.
I thought of a couple of things. Did we meet in May? No?
No, we did not.
Okay, so 2 things then, since our last meeting. I went to the tree planting demonstration, and I think Todd was there too. I thought that was really educational. I thought it was great. There's a lot. I've been to one before, and that was years ago, but since that time, they have some new tactics that they use and different ways to plant trees to make sure that the tree stays healthy. So it was really cool to learn about how to properly do things. And I'm also involved in Lions, and we have a kind of a global initiative to plant 15 million trees in 2024. So it was really beneficial to me to be able to learn how to do it properly. Also, I went to St. Paul Pigs game. It was a really great time. I'd never seen a rugby match before, but it was super fun. And as soon as they recognized me as a Parks Commission guy, like 10 people came up to me and was chatting to me about, what they wanted to do and what their plans were. And super great group of guys, and I would really be in favor of working with them in any way we can, because I think they're a boon to Maplewood. There was a huge crowd there. I later learned it was one of their special events, so maybe more people were there than normal, but the one downside I did see was parking at Afton. They took up every space and grass and sidewalk, and I mean, it was an intense amount of, parking melee, I guess, if you want to say that. But overall, it was a great event, good to watch. The crowd was awesome, and people seemed to be having a great time, so I think it's a great partnership.
Now, they had come and talked to us
Right.
before,
Yep.
and they were supposed to let us know when there was a big event so we could all come.
Chair, members of the commission, they did, when Kevin did come to talk
Yep.
to the group about the bleachers and whatever, he did invite everyone to, it was their 50th
But
anniversary
he
game.
didn't have a date yet, did he? I thought he was going to get back to us, because I've been waiting to hear when it is.
Oh, well, the pig roast, the big event in the fall is their pig roast and their
Pig
big
roast.
fun, and that is coming in the fall, and you will definitely get
Okay,
an invitation.
all right, 'cause I was
Yep,
going
so
to
stay
say, I
tuned.
thought he told us something he was going to get back, and I didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
that date isn't set yet, but it may be by the time we're
Because I
talking
think
now,
it would
but
be important that we get a group of us to go, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that would be very important.
absolutely.
Where are we at here? If nobody has any more commissioner presentations, we will move on to the staff presentation, Parks and Natural Resources Division updates.
Okay. Well, I think I mentioned already, but the playground equipment has been delivered for Sunset. We're having some issues just getting things done with the weather that we've been having, but that playground should be installed shortly, so that'll be really exciting. I know the people in that neighborhood have been waiting a long time for the playground to get put in, so, and I will let you know when it's up and running and get you pictures and let you know so you can all go out and see it. And then I just wanted to share this. We've shared the events that we have, but if I could have the computer, just some events that are coming up, and here you had mentioned the one, but there is a youth safety camp that's actually happening at Wakefield on Tuesday. Rain or shine, they'll be in the building, so there's the safety camp that Public Safety is putting on. So that's a great event. It's a one-day camp for 2nd through 4th graders. And it's a go, so it's definitely happening. And then the pickleball with Public Safety, they are doing on June 29th. They'll be at Harvest from 1 to 4, and you don't need to sign up, or you just need to show up. And if you want to come play pickleball with some members of police and fire, they'd love to have you there. And then they are doing it again July 14th at Sherwood Park. So,
Are those for kids or adults for the pickleball?
all ages and abilities.
What that meant, I seen that.
Yeah, we'll play friendly games, so they won't beat up on you too much, and they'll rotate players in, so anybody can go. And I did email these attachments to you earlier tonight. I just didn't print it up, but you do have these that I emailed to you. And then, of course, light it up Maplewood. Can you believe the 4th of July is right around the corner? But we will have our 4th of July celebration, as always, at Hazelwood, starting at 4, and then fireworks right around 10 o'clock. And then Public Safety also has their putt-putt with Public Safety. They've done this before, but that's July 11th from 1 to 4 over at the Golf Dome, just down the street. So, and it's free. So for any kids, that might want to do it. I'm sure if you're an adult, they'd probably let you in, but I think this is geared a little bit more toward kids. But, and then they're doing their Fishing with Friends outreach event again, and that is July 17th from 4 to 7 at Spoon Lake, and they will provide fishing poles and what you need. You don't have to bring anything with you. They even provide the bait, and then I don't know what kind of food they're going to have, but some kind of treats, and they will, if you want to learn how to fish or just fish with Public Safety, you can. And then our next Celebrate Summer event is July 24th, and that is out at Afton. We were just talking about Afton Park. That's where the St. Paul Jazz Pigs play rugby, but we will have our big Celebrate Summer event there, and we would love to have, if the commission wants to come out and be part of it, great. But as we talked, August 21st, and I'm trying to remember now if I mentioned it to the group per se now or if it was a little bit earlier, but August 21st, the date was selected quite a while ago, and it turns out that it was the only date that worked, but it falls on our commission date for August. So again, I know our July meeting will be the bus tour, but with summer being so active, this is a way we would love to have the commission come out and, man the table like they have for Touch Truck before, but if they could do that on the 21st, and we would have that in lieu of our August meeting, but we would have information there and have you be our ambassadors to the community. And if the weather's willing, last year this one was canceled in August because of the heat. It was like 103 heat index that day, so let's hope for better this year. But otherwise, that's a very well-attended event, and maybe we'll have some more information about the potential playground at Edgerton, and maybe we can talk about that more, out at that event. That's kind of my hope, but might be a little premature now. So those are the Celebrate Summer events. And then National Night Out is August 6th, 5 to 9. And if you have they highly recommend if people want to have parties, but if you want to do ride-alongs, because city staff go out with Public Safety too and go visit the parties, if any of you are interested, and Todd, you as well, or any of the other student commissioners, and they'll buddy you up with someone and you can ride along if you'd like to come around and go around to the different parties. So you can just let me know if you are interested. So lots of good stuff. And then this is even further ahead, but they have their fire open house in October, and then Trunk or Treat. Can't believe we're already talking about it, but just so you know, Trunk or Treat is October 27th from 1 to 4, and that's the big Halloween event we have here at City Hall. And again, we'd love to have you be part of that. They have all the vehicles done up and decorated, and they have some public safety vehicles, of course, but they also had some public works. We had the haunted tractor last year. The Parks Department, we did the big tractor display and had lots of fun stuff. So that's something that's coming up too. So, and again, like I said, I emailed those to you, but this is just, and I'll probably share these again, but I just wanted to get them to you as soon as possible so you knew what outreach we had coming up.
Have they talked about a date for Touch a Truck rescheduling yet?
It will be in September. We haven't decided if it's going to be that first or second week of September. We have to make sure everyone can be there, and we want to make sure the Bearcat is going to be there, and some of the other vehicles, but it'll be either that first or second week of September. So stay tuned. And that's all I have.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.